Hello. Good morning. I need to come closer to my. Actually, it's not my laptop. I had borrowed it from a friend because my laptop had a water incident. I I was asleep and I woke up at the middle of the night and I found my apartment was overflowing with water and unfortunately, I kept my laptop in the floor in that night and I lost it um, with the water incident. Anyways, luckily, one of my friends has um, given me this laptop to work for a while, and I'm really happy for that. I'm really grateful that I found help um, and through his medium. Made through this medium. Anyways, I will start the timer. Okay. Together, these expressions prompted what he called a sixth sense of danger. He had no idea what was wrong, but he knew something was wrong. It turned out that the heart of the fire had not been in the kitchen, but in the basement beneath where the man had stood. We have all heard such stories of expert intuition. The chess master who walks past a street game and announce "white mates in three" without stopping, or the physician who makes a complex diagnosis after a single glance at a patient. Expert intuition strikes us as magical, but it is not. Indeed, each of us performs feats of intuitive expertise many times each day. Most of us are pitch perfect in detecting anger in the fast word of a telephone call. Recognize as we enter a room that we were the subject of the conversation and quickly react to subtle signs that the driver of the car in the next lane is dangerous. Our everyday intuitive abilities are no less marvelous than the striking insights of an experienced firefighter or physician, only more common. The psychology of accurate intuition involves no magic. Perhaps the best short statement of it is by the great Herbert Simon, who studied chess masters and showed that after thousands of hours of practice, they come to see the pieces on the board differently from the rest of us. You can feel Simon's impatience with the mythologizing of expert intuition when he writes. The situation has provided a queue. This queue has given the expert access to information stored in memory, and the information provides the answer. Intuition is nothing more and nothing less than recognition. We are not surprised when a 2-year-old looks at a dog and says, "Doggy," because we are used to the miracle of children learning to recognize and name things. Simon's point is that the miracles of expert intuition have the same character. Valid intuitions develop when experts have learned to recognize familiar elements in a new situation and to act in a manner that is appropriate to it. Good intuitive judgments come to mind with the same immediacy as doggy. Unfortunately, professionals' intuitions do not all arise from true expertise. Many years ago, I visited the chief investment officer of a large financial firm who told me that he had just invested some tens of millions of dollars in the stock of Ford Motor Company. When I asked how he had made that decision, he replied that he had recently attended an automobile show and had been impressed. Boy, do they know how to make a car, was his explanation. He made it very clear that he trusted his gut feeling and was satisfied with himself and with his decision. I found it remarkable that he had apparently not considered the one question that an economist would call relevant: is Ford stock currency underpriced? Instead, he had listened to his intuition. He liked the cars, he liked the company, and he liked the idea of owning its stock. From what I know um, about the accuracy of stock picking, it is reasonable to believe that he did not know what he was doing. The specific heuristics that Amos and I studied prohibited uh, little help in understanding how the executive came to invest in Ford stock. Actually provided and mistook. But a broader conception of heuristics now exists, which offers a good account. An important advance is that emotion now looms larger in our understanding of intuitive judgments and choices that it did in the past. The executive's decision would today be described as an example of the affect heuristic, where judgments and decisions are guided directly by feelings of liking and disliking, with little deliberation or reasoning. When confronted with a problem, choosing a safe move or deciding whether to invest in a stock, the machinery of intuitive thought does the best it can. If the individual has relevant expertise, she will recognize the situation and the intuitive solution that comes to her mind is likely to be correct. This is what happens when a chess master looks at a complex position. The few moves that immediately occur to him are all strong. When the question is difficult and a skilled solution is not available, intuition still has a shot. An answer may come to mind quickly, but it is not an answer to the original question. The question that the executive faced: should I invest in Ford stock, was difficult, but the answer to an easier and related question: do I like Ford cars, come readily to his mind and determined his choice. This is the essence of intuitive heuristics. When faced with a difficult question, we often answer an easier one instead, usually without noticing the substitution. The spontaneous search for an intuitive solution sometimes fails. Neither an expert solution nor a heuristic answer comes to mind. In such cases, we often find ourselves switching to a slower, more deliberate, and effortful form of thinking. This is the slow thinking of the title. Fast thinking includes both variants of intuitive thought, the expert and the heuristic, as well as the entirely automatic mental activities of perception and memory. The operations that enable you to know there is a lamp on your desk or retrieve the name of the capital of Russia. The distinction between fast and slow thinking has been explored by many psychologists over the last 25 years for reasons that I explain more fully in the next chapter. I describe mental life by the metaphor of two agents called System 1 and System 2, which respectively produce fast and slow thinking. I speak of the features of intuitive and deliberate thought as if they were traits and dispositions of two characters in your mind. In the picture that emerges from recent research, the intuitive system 1 is more influential than your expertise tells you, and it is the secret author of many of the choices and judgments you make. Most of this book is about the working of System 1 and the mutual influences between it and System 2. What comes next? The book is divided into five parts. Part 1 presents the basic elements of two systems approach to judgment and choice. It elaborates the distinction between the automatic operation of System 1 and the control operations of System 2 and shows how associative memory, the core of System 1, continually constructs a coherent interpretation of what is going on in our world at any instant. I attempt to give a sense of the complexity and richness of the automatic and often unconscious processes that underlie intuitive thinking and of how these automatic processes explain the heuristic of judgment. A goal is to introduce a language for thinking and talking about the mind. Part 2 updates the study of judgment heuristics and explores a major puzzle. Why is it so difficult for us to think statistically? We easily think uh, associate, we think metaphorically, we think casually, but statistics requires thinking about many things at once, which is something that System 1 is not designed to do. The difficulties of statistical thinking contribute to the main theme of Part 3, which describes a puzzling limitation of our mind, our excessive confidence in what we believe we know, and our apparent inability to acknowledge the full extent of our ignorance and the uncertainty of the world we live in. We are prone to overestimate how much we understand about the world and to underestimate the role of chance in events. Overconfidence is fed by the illusory certainty of hindsight. That's my timer. Today, the book introduces um, a rule of substitution and System 1 and System 2. Kahneman talks about System 1 and System 2 as referring System 1 as the fast thinking machinery and System 2 is the slow thinking machinery. It's like um, the things that I have in my raw memory or like the things that are readily accessible to me. They are called uh, System 1. That the information that I can access without any um, hard work, like about any situation. And mostly they are derived uh, from my working memory, and secondly, the feelings I have from a certain incident, and secondly, the slow thinking, which requires to consider a lot of um, comparison, a lot of um, hard work, or a mentally draining process. And laziness is ingrained in human nature. So, human mind always tries to stop, like working more, and always tries to find the ways to avoid the mentally draining task. That's why the emotions come and they kind of corrupts the decision making and choice selection. With the System 1, like the answer that is readily available to And he brings a heuristic here, which is, I guess it is referred as rule of substitution. Like, if I'm asked a very difficult question, that I do not have a readily answer available, I will look for an alternative question which is very easy to answer. And like he gives the example of a stock picking and some executive who invested millions in a s- specific car brand, but he doesn't know anything about their car business. He actually uh, eh, went to the car factory and he liked it. He had created emotions for that brand, and then he invested millions. And I mean, the thing is that ideally we are rational. I mean, a human being is a rational being. But the thing is that we are also emotional, and this heuristic um, kind of draws a um, an interesting point, like where emotion is corrupting our decision making processes. And uh, like, I mean, as well as the system one. But the thing is that, like, we cannot rely on system two always. And like, our uh, minds have limited capacities. So um, as well as they are designed to allocate resources for only the most required. So that's why they try to avoid the mentally draining tasks, and um, that requires a lot of mental work. And this availability heuristic helps a lot. Like, one of the very interesting example or insight I have developed, that I have shared about the test I am retaking. And my lazy mind is trying to find a lot of other ways to avoid this mentally draining task, is going into fantasy thinking, is going into a lot of maladaptive coping patterns that I had developed over the years. And I mean, I still haven't been able to cope with this pattern of my mind. But the way that worked so far effectively is pause, like pausing everything, and master all the mental energy that I have to divert my attention to that mentally training task. It's very easy to say, but it's very difficult to implement. I mean, as well as if I have the sense that it is difficult, the delay or the procrastination will be prolonged. Like, if I consider it as easy, or if I consider it as um, something very routine that I do, that well, I mean, this emotional roadblock that is creating to divert my attention and act on my impulses induced by system one will not happen always. But as well as I'm a human being, so I will always make mistakes. And there is something um, I have learned. There's a very interesting phrase like beat yourself with a feather, not a stick, or not a hammer. So I was having a very long conversation with a friend of mine, and she was saying that um, I know we are the best critics of us. The constant drumming voice within our mind that is constantly making judgments about everything we do in every single day, um, kind of um, makes us go down. And it is also an important um, it is also an important factor for the creation of emotions. Like something outer than me doesn't create emotions within me. I am the creator of my emotions and feelings. I take a cue from the external world and I match it with a memory that I have, and then I create an emotion and I refer it with a name. So I have full control over what emotion I am creating within myself. I don't have any control on the external world, but if I get triggered by a specific statement, I have control um, over that incident. Like I get really triggered when someone refers me mad or something like that. Yesterday I went for a walk with my brother, and someone uh, referred me, a very young kid referred me mad. And I think I have shared with it publicly again and again. I have I struggle with core shame, um, because of schizophrenia in my family, and my other siblings um, have schizophrenia, and my family struggles with schizophrenia. In fact, I am the only member in my family who, who is not yet diagnosed with the disease, um, and it creates a huge amount of shame within myself. But it had created for a long time. But the thing is that um, I'm not continuing it. I accept myself and my family as the way it is. I accept reality as it is. And like the person who shamed me yesterday, he doesn't know about my family history. He was just, you know, saying something out of the blue, and it triggered me heavily, but I didn't respond with my trigger. But the thing is that these days I am trying to understand the triggers, um, my emotional triggers, and if I am acting out or reacting rather than responding, um, what was the emotional trigger? And secondly, um, was there an option that I could avoid it, that emotional trigger? And like there is another incident that lately happened. I called a guy for help, and he was, I know, the Eid festival went here. I mean, just recently passed here, and he was busy. He was in his in-laws' house, and he actually Initially, he told me that he will help, and then he didn't pick my call later, which actually triggered me my and which triggered my abandonment issues. And like, um, I used to be a lot of sensitive, and I'm still a lot sensitive. There is a personality type called hypersensitive person, but I cannot myself self-diagnose it that in that category. But I have a lot of symptoms of that category. But the thing is that um, there are actually two types: HSP and empath, like people who are too much empathetic. Um, but the thing is that um, I have sensitivity issues, and I was triggered that this guy is not responding to me, and everything was falling apart in my mind, like the mental catastrophe. Like one of the very interesting statements that I kind of listen or try to em- embed within myself, that is like we suffer more from imagination than reality, and my all this delusion hooked up within my mind or our minds. So I was feeling abandoned, and my abandonment triggers kind of had started off because this guy had said he will help me and he didn't respond to me. But luckily, I had a conversation with him, and he called me back yesterday, and I'm really happy that. Um, I mean, you have seen that at one point I was getting triggered and felt being abandoned, and secondly, I felt joyful that he's respectful to me and he called me back. So the thing is that those both of those are emotions, and um, like at one point I felt like if I can numb out my emotions completely, I would be in a better or sane state. Um, but um, then lately, I have realized like that was a wrong notion. I used to think like if I could become a bot and avoid to feel the emotions, I would be in a better place. But these days, I feel like I need to feel my emotions and feel them well, but in moderation. Like I didn't paid much heed to my calling for um, being abundant. I didn't feel that much sad or responded to that trigger. And even when I received call again, call from this guy, I was not that much joyful at all. I was trying to remain in balance, like um, and explosive thoughts or like thoughts that create those emotions or cues or abuses those or memories of abuses those create those emotions. I try to overlook them. I have been trying to overlook them. I'm trying to um, cultivate a mind or an inner state where I have um, enough awareness of what is happening within my mind, um, moment by moment. So this is like one of the very interesting teaching that I have learned, the virtue of awareness and practicing equanimity, like um, remaining internally and both externally balanced. So thanks again for listening. Hopefully I will come back tomorrow. And thanks again.